tell the people who you are and what you do, which is so many things.
Okay. My name is Marta Anise Napoleon Mazzoni. That's my full name. That's all of it.
All the names.
All of the names, even my hidden names. And then I work full-time for my family food service company. So I've been there 17 years. We are 70 plus years old in Pittsburgh. We are a family food service company that my grandfather started, and we deal with like restaurants and bars and coffee shops and all the mom and pop shops in Pittsburgh. Not all of them, but that's my full-time job. So it's like restaurant consultant, sales manager, operations, logistics, pricing, all of that. And then about 5 years ago, I wanted to start a podcast that was just fueling my curiosity to become more interested in the things that I were curious about, the things that I found curious. And I'm a solo traveler advocate. I've done a lot of solo travel and adventuring around the world alone. And I've lived in Pittsburgh my whole life. So I wanted to incorporate those things together and have just a love of my curiosity, which I realize and I embrace now, which is part of my transition of accepting the fact that it's a jitney and it's like takes you where you're supposed to go, right? Like the podcast is kind of like your own therapeutic thing. It's yours. It's yours. Just like yours is yours. It molds you to what's next in your life. So in my podcast, that was a hard thing for me to embrace. And I talk about entertainment. I talk about travel. I talk about lifestyle, food, and drink on my podcast. And it's all the things that I find curious and interesting and that kind of fuel my nature. Yeah.
You have your podcast. As I started like going deep into all the episodes that you've done.
God.
Like, and I mean, the amount that you span, it truly is like kind of being like able to open up somebody's diary and being like, oh, this is what they were into like this year. And this is what they're into this year. And this is what they're into this month. And it's a really,
wow.
I mean, not for nothing. I've had a blog. So like I've done that type of thing where like I went back and you can kind of see like themes where like this is where my head was for a while. I was really focused in this area for a little bit, and then I switched and I got really zeroed in over here. Like it's very much like it, you know, it changes with the tides.
Well, I'm gonna pay you a huge a compliment. I was listening to a podcast today, and it talked about achieving your dreams and how to get, like, a lot of people have asked me how I've gotten bigger names on my podcast. You know, like I've had bigger names on my podcast. And
yeah, as your intro shows.
Yeah, like I've had some big names on my podcast, which are cool and all, but they asked me how I did it, and it was fascinating. I was listening to this podcast this morning. I think it was it Hal Elrod? I think it was a Hal Elrod podcast. And he was talking about how to succeed with your dreams. And it talked about being invested in the people that you want to have around you and that you look up to and that you want to have on your show, and really, really speaking to them. And I have to say that when you sent me that message about my transitional blog that I had, I was like, this reached someone. And that's just the simple fact of it. It was just like, oh, this reached someone, because that's the whole point. I've gotten into my podcast where I'm at the point where I want to help someone. I want to help people. I've gotten to the point where I want to speak to people and like hope that it resonates culturally or physically or whatnot. And that was the biggest thing. So yes, I've never, I guess my point is I've never had somebody look back on my podcast and notice my trends.
Oh, I mean,
it's a little bit, you know what? It's a little bit like, oh shit.
no, come on. No. But I mean, I feel like, so I've heard this so many times, just like in like celebrity interviews and stuff like that, where they'll be like, you clearly didn't even look me up. Like, you must have taken a look at like my Wikipedia page or something, but you didn't,
Yeah.
you don't know anything about me. And this is dumb. And, you know, like nobody watching this is getting anything, from me through the questions that you're asking. And I mean, so for me, I'm like, it'd be derelict of duty of me to not go into you a little bit and see the stuff that I haven't already seen.
You'd be surprised though how many people want. I think what it is how many people aren't speaking like from their core values of what they are truly interested in. Because for me, I can't fake it. That's the thing. Like I just can't. I just can't. So I have to be interested in what, like, the person that I'm having on my podcast. It has to fuel me, because otherwise what's the fucking point? So, it doesn't make sense. What's the whole point we're doing it for? So, it has to interest you. It has to inspire you. It has to lift you up. And that's a huge part of it. So I thank you for your message. It really made my day.
Well, you're very welcome.